Hi, I'm Lee Mather and I'm Franchise Game Director on Codemasters F1 2020. F1 2020 is the official video game of the 2020 Formula 1 World Championship. The game will feature all 20 official Formula 1 drivers. It will feature all 10 of the official Formula 1 teams and will also contain all 22 of the tracks that would make up the F1 2020 World Championship. The game will also contain the 2019 Formula 2 Championship, along with the drivers and teams that took part in that series, as well as the 12 race event calendar. So with Formula 1 being an annual franchise for us at Codemasters, every year we're always looking to bring something new, something exciting to the series, and this year that big headline feature is My Team. So what's My Team? My Team is your opportunity to be the 11th team on the grid. Your chance to create your own Formula 1 team and go up against the current giants of Formula 1. So before you get the opportunity to hit the track, you need to create your team. So you want to pick yourself a livery that's appealing to you, and then create a badge which you can use to represent your team. These are important as these are your team's identity once you're out on track. Then every Formula 1 team needs funding. So the first thing you'll do is to select a primary sponsor. That primary sponsor will provide the funding to then allow you to build the rest of your team. So next up is going to be the power unit. So you need to select a power unit from one of the official Formula 1 power unit suppliers. And then you need a second driver. You can't have a Formula 1 team without a teammate. So you'll then move to the driver market and you'll get the opportunity to hire a driver from the Formula 2 season. Once you're happy with the look of your team and that you've got a package that you think will have you fighting for victories, you'll then move on to the first press interview that you have in the game, and that's presented by Formula 1 reporter Will Buxton. The questions that Will ask will also have impact on the direction of development of your first season's vehicle. So if you answer in such a way as to comment on you think you've got a very strong power unit, then that department will be slightly upgraded when you begin your My Team playthrough. And then from this point on you'll get a cinematic car reveal and your car's revealed to the rest of the world. And then once your car's been revealed to the world, it's time to start managing things. So in F1 2020 there's a myriad of things that the player will need to manage. So first up there's a season timeline. In here you'll be managing things that a Formula 1 team boss would also have to handle. So how do you manage the time and the disciplines around the team? So it could be, I want to send a driver off to do some driver training. That's great, it'll give them a boost, my teammate will be a more accomplished driver. But meanwhile he may be neglecting something else, so it may be that he's not able to do some press activities. And press activities would bring in sponsor benefits, so we'd get additional funding for the team. How you balance this timeline and the activities that the team and the drivers and the departments have to take part in will determine how successful your team will become in Formula 1. As all of these things generate income, they generate motivation for the departments, and they can assist with the R&D departments as well. And speaking a little bit more about the R&D in the game, developing the car is obviously a large part of the research and development system, but it's also the facilities that the player now has to develop and manage. And amongst those are aerodynamics, chassis, powertrain and durability, all four of which go to have an impact on the overall performance of the vehicle. But a Formula 1 team is much bigger than that, so we also have personnel and marketing. Personnel will obviously help you to train your second driver to make them more of a presence on track and more successful, and marketing will help you when it comes to brokering deals with new sponsors and trying to get the best deal for your team. And talking about deals, the game's got a fully fledged contract system. So when you go into the driver market now to negotiate for another driver, you have to negotiate against the other teams. Or even if I want to retain the driver which I've got at the moment, I still have to negotiate with that driver. And the additional money that those drivers have, they can then spend on perks, which are buffs for their performance. So they are constantly evolving and constantly developing with you and your team. And the driver market in F1 2020 will not only contain drivers from the Formula 2 series, but obviously from the Formula 1 series as well. So as you become more successful, you can start looking at very high-end drivers. Of course, they're not just going to join your team because you want them or because you've got the funding to bring them in. They're going to want a car that can win as well. So it's important that your team has the level of acclaim that that driver requires, that level of facilities that that driver requires. If, for example, I approach Charles Leclerc and he's expecting an engine facility at level 3, chassis at level 3, and that's the absolute minimum he'll accept, and I'm not at those levels, then the negotiations are going to fall down straight away. So there's multiple ways that the player has to manage their performance throughout the game, and how they engage with not only the drivers but also the driver market, and how they acquire those second drivers within the game. And of course, you can't have a driver market without being able to rate drivers, and this is a new feature of F1 2020. We've worked very closely with the technical team at Formula 1, and we've derived a wide variety of stats that we've used to give accurate statistics for how we think each driver should be rated within the game. Each driver is rated on their experience, their racecraft, their awareness out on track, and their pace. And this gives you a great starting point to understand what sort of value for money you're going to get from a driver, what sort of level of performance you're going to get, and is the basis of the driver market. These statistics will also be updated throughout the course of the season based on the driver's real world performances out on track. The player can obviously choose whether they wish to take those stats updated to their game or not, as it may be that during their career the driver market has actively moved those driver statistics around based on how they've performed and how the teams they've driven for have developed those drivers. So that's a little bit of insight into the big new game mode in F1 2020, and of course we've still got the career mode as we've always had in the series, something which we've continued to expand upon this year, bringing in new changes to the R&D system and a new rush mechanic on how items are developed. We've also brought over some of the driver market, but obviously that works slightly differently in driver career because you're a driver, not a team boss as well, so you're a commodity, so it's important that you obviously have a good value in the driver market. But expanding a little bit on some of the other areas of the game which we've worked hard on this year, we've always found that Formula 1's loved by so many people, but it's a very daunting prospect to sometimes play. It is actually a very hard, punishing on-track experience for a lot of people. They see the sport, they see the game, they love it, but they can't play the game at the level they would choose to. So we've added a new accessibility feature to the game this year, and this goes as far as removing the off-track punishing surfaces, so gravel's no longer punishing, getting stuck on the grass, losing the traction, those things are removed. We've also simplified the options menus because again, Formula 1's a very technical game and we wanted it to be more accessible to people who were finding that a little bit off-putting. And then back to the on-track, we've also added an automatic reset to track. You know, we were seeing players occasionally go completely off down a dead end at a track such as Baku and then having to do a 3-point turn to get back onto the circuit. So that's now covered with an automatic reset to track. And then finally, probably the most heavy-handed of the assists is the AI auto steering for the player. So this assists the player with their steering to help them navigate the circuit and race more cleanly. So put together, these will actually broaden the appeal of the game to any Formula 1 fan who wishes to play the game. And with us making such great strides in accessibility, we thought this was the perfect opportunity to bring split screen back to the series. This is something that we haven't had this generation, and it's something that the fans have been asking for some time, so we thought this was the perfect opportunity to put in that two-player shared experience, playing split screen in Grand Prix mode. So hopefully this will be something that really gets players playing together, allows that person who maybe can't race against their friends because they're not so skilled at the game to be able to race because we have the accessibility, and to allow more people to really engage with the game and enjoy what Formula 1 has to offer. And then also slightly related, you know, trying to broaden the appeal of the game and, you know, allow people to play the game the way they choose to play. We've also got the option this year to change the length of the season. So previously you would have done a full Formula 1 season. Now the player has the opportunity to do a 10 race season and pick the tracks that they wish to race, a 16 race season or the full 22 race Formula 1 calendar. This is fantastic for players who have a limited number of favourite tracks maybe, or are slightly more time limited and don't have the time to do a full 22 race season. Or also just for those people who literally want to skip Monaco because it is such a challenging though beautiful circuit. And while I'm mentioning circuits, that transitions nicely into the two new circuits that we've got in the game this year. So the first one being Zandvoort. Zandvoort is a beautiful track based in the Netherlands, set on a beach location. It's a very old school Formula 1 track, but it's had a huge amount of work this year to bring it up to modern Formula 1 standards, including the inclusion of a very unique banked corner, something which we haven't seen in Formula 1 for some time. So that should produce some incredibly exciting racing in a beautiful location when it does get the opportunity to be driven in the sport. And then we've also got Hanoi, which in contrast is a very different style of circuit. This is a street track set in a city. It's very much taking in the geometry and the geography of the area. and this one obviously has a very striking look as well. It's got some huge straights as well with massive braking zones, so I think we will witness some incredible overtaking moves into those. And then the rest of the track is a very, very technical and high-speed flowing circuit. So that's a high-level overview of some of the cool new features that we've added to F1 2020. But I also want to touch upon something we've added, which is a new deluxe addition to the game as well. And this features Michael Schumacher, obviously a true racing legend. So amongst this pack, we've added the Jordan 191, which is often touted as one of the most beautiful Formula 1 cars ever. It's also the first car that Michael Schumacher drove in Formula 1. We've also got the Benetton 194 and the Benetton B195, Michael Schumacher taking his first championships in those cars. And then we also included the Ferrari F1 2000, which was the car that began Ferrari's dominance through that period in Formula 1. But it's not just the cars that are the star of this pack. We've also got some really beautiful race suits that are inspired by Michael Schumacher. We also have helmets and wonderful car liveries as well. You'll also get a unique podium emote as well, as that's something new we've added to the game this year as well. The ability to celebrate on the podium with a unique animation that you choose to apply to your character. And finally, to wrap things up, this is also the 70th anniversary of Formula 1. So available as pre-order, you'll be able to get the 70th anniversary edition of the game, and in this there'll be some extra unique customization content for the player to apply to their driver and their car. So there'll be a new race suit for the driver, a new helmet, vehicle skin, badge, and also a cool new podium emote which you can apply to your character, so you can have that unique celebration when climbing onto the podium and celebrating all of those victories. So I really hope you've enjoyed that very brief insight into what we've done with F1 2020 this year. The game will be out on July the 10th, and it'll be available on Xbox One, PS4, PC, and for the first time, Google Stadia. So thank you very much for watching.